Tonight's headlines: Al-Qaeda plot for new hijack attack revealed. President Bush and Saudis clash over 9/11 probe. New Saddam message about son's death. Also tonight, betting on terror. An embarrassed Pentagon pulls the plug on plans for a marketplace to bet on attacks. Eye on America. Slow economy? You'd never know it in at least one booming industry. And mystery solved? Years after a child disappears, a woman makes a startling claim.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. A warning from the Department of Homeland Security. The terror group behind the murderous September 11th attack on America may be planning to try it again and soon, by taking advantage of what appears to be a gaping hole in what is supposed to be the U.S. security net. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin has details.
Nearly 2 years after 9/11, despite tighter airport security and immigration procedures, Al-Qaeda, or what's left of it, is planning another operation to hijack a commercial airliner and fly it into a building here in the United States. That, according to a recently captured Al-Qaeda operative who has told his interrogators of a plan to exploit a loophole which still allows as many as 200,000 foreigners a year to briefly enter the U.S. without a visa. Without, in other words, having their names checked against a computerized watch list of known or suspected terrorists. The loophole, called transit without visa, allows a foreigner to, for instance, board a flight in Madrid and fly to Miami for a connecting flight to Bogota. No visa required. The plane could be hijacked as it approached Miami, or the connecting flight taken over as it left Miami with a full load of fuel. Although as a result of 9/11, cockpit doors are bulletproof and bolted shut, and some flights carry armed air marshals.
Officials say the information from the prisoner is consistent with recent communications intercepts in which known Al-Qaeda operatives have been overheard talking about another 9/11 attack.
With Osama bin Laden in hiding and many of his key lieutenants either captured or dead, Al-Qaeda may no longer be capable of pulling off multiple simultaneous hijackings like 9/11. But the Department of Homeland Security has issued a warning to the airlines that at least one of these attacks could be executed by the end of the summer. The Bush administration will decide this week whether to close the transit without visa loophole, but the airlines warn the resulting loss of passengers would cost them roughly $130 million a year worth of business. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
There is deepening controversy tonight over a classified section of the new congressional report on 9/11, the section on alleged Saudi government help for the terrorists. If appearances are correct, the Saudis are concerned about all the speculation. They publicly called on President Bush today to declassify the secret section. CBS's John Roberts reports the president still says, no way.
President Bush today said if he made public the 28-page section of the report, he might as well hand Al-Qaeda all his intelligence.
It makes no sense to declassify when we've got an ongoing investigation that could jeopardize that investigation.
The president today rejected the idea, despite a personal plea from Saudi Arabia that the secrecy surrounding sources of funding for the 9/11 terrorists is throwing unfair suspicion on them.
Saudi Arabia is indicted by insinuation. It is an outrage to any sense of fairness.
3 of the 4 authors of the report also insist 95% of the classified section could easily be made public. The Saudis claim they have nothing to hide, but some have suggested the White House is trying to shield the Saudis from embarrassment.
I think there is an effort to protect a foreign government or governments from disclosure of their participation in the plot leading up to September the 11th.
Sources say the redacted section lays out a money trail between Saudi Arabia and supporters of Al-Qaeda. Among others, it singles out Omar al-Bayoumi, who gave financial assistance to 9/11 hijackers Nawaf al-Hamzi and Khalid al-Midar. The FBI charges al-Bayoumi, an official of the Saudi Civil Aviation Authority, never lacked for money and is believed to have received funds from a charitable trust run by the wife of the Saudi ambassador to the United States. The White House today asked the Saudis to give U.S. investigators access to al-Bayoumi, something the Saudis have so far refused.
Saudi claim that they have nothing to hide. in our view, is simply not credible.
Paul Hanley, an attorney for 9/11 families, tried to sue the Saudi royal family, claims his investigations have uncovered high-level Saudi support for groups linked to Al-Qaeda.
Senior members of the Saudi royal family personally made donations to organizations which our government, the United States government, has designated terrorist organizations.
The Saudis today said they are disappointed that the president won't make the section public, but skeptics wonder if the Saudis aren't merely trying to deflect criticism by protesting loudly, fully aware that the president will not make the document public. Dan? John Roberts reporting live from the White House. Thanks. Another audio tape purported to be from Saddam Hussein aired today on an Arabic news channel, the third one this month. The 9-minute message noted that Saddam's 2 sons were killed last week in a gun battle with American troops. And as CBS's Byron Pitts reports, for most Iraqis, that may finally settle the matter.
For once, a supposed audio tape message from Saddam Hussein may have benefited the U.S. military. This message confirms his sons are dead, says this Iraqi man. On the tape, Saddam calls the death of his sons good news. Uday and Qusay, he says, have become martyrs. They died in a brave battle with the enemy. The not-so-good news for Saddam, however, the capture of former bodyguard Adnan Abdullah al-Muslid and 11 others in Tikrit. Although Pentagon sources admit al-Muslid likely hasn't seen Saddam in months. While American forces are getting closer to Saddam, the animosity between average Iraqis and U.S. soldiers is getting worse. Guerrilla war is not a gentleman's game. American GIs are getting killed almost every day, so troops see no reason to apologize for how they do business.
Since we're trained to do other things, we're not civil affairs specialists.
This rise in tension is due in part to expectations.
It's an alien land, and I think the question should be asked, can soldiers born and raised in Burlington, Vermont, hack it in the streets of Baghdad?
No. Case in point, U.S. soldiers ran down and arrested these looters. When the store owner tried to identify the robbers,
Stop!
screaming thieves, thieves, he was arrested. The soldiers didn't understand Arabic.
What the hell were you thinking? What the hell were you thinking?
And in Iraq, misunderstandings still have dangerous consequences. Byron Pitts, CBS News, Baghdad. Let's go.
Visiting the White House today, Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon discussed the Mideast peace process with President Bush. They agreed to disagree about a security fence Israel is building to separate Israeli and Palestinian communities. Sharon said construction of the fence will continue, but Israel will try to minimize the impact on the everyday life of the Palestinians. The President and the Prime Minister also discussed the thousands of Palestinians in Israeli prisons. Palestinian leaders want them freed, and some have been released. But Sharon said today those who, quote, have blood on their hands will stay behind bars. CBS's Kimberly Dozier has more on this issue that could make or break the peace process.
This man owes his freedom to the Middle East roadmap. He's one of a few hundred Palestinian prisoners released in what Israel calls a goodwill gesture. It's a key demand by the new Palestinian administration in return for keeping militants from attacking Israel. But there are still almost 6,000 more Palestinians being held. Their families want them home. For Palestinians, this is a deal breaker. They want thousands of loved ones released from Israeli jails, or they're willing to drop diplomacy and go back to the fight. Israel says it will not free those who have killed or tried to kill Israelis. It's already paying the political price for releasing this man. Israel says for lack of evidence. He is the suspected mastermind behind this attack on an armored school bus on its morning run from a Jewish settlement in Gaza. 3 of Ofer Cohen's children were on board.
They were on the way to school, and they terribly wounded, mostly in their legs.
Is it difficult to walk now? Half and half, I get it.
Tehila lost both her legs, but you'd almost never know now. Her brother Israel lost one leg, so did their older sister Orit. The kids still take the same route to school every day. Now there are more Israeli troops to protect them, but they still live in fear.
Nobody care about what happened in the reality. Just like, okay, let's be nice.
But they say that this is going to lead to peace. This is the roadmap to peace.
First of all, we have to see the peace.
Cohen believes the guilty are going free while his children are stuck with a sentence they cannot escape. Many Palestinians say releasing their loved ones is the only way to free both sides from violence. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, Kfar Darom.
In tiny Liberia, West Africa, the civil war danger deepened today for civilians caught in fighting between government forces and rebels who captured the country's second-largest seaport. Rebel control of the port of Buchanan blocks food shipments to the rest of Liberia, including Monrovia, the capital, 60 miles up the coast. 1.5 million people there are already suffering from shortages of food, medicine, and clean water. Aid workers say many will starve if the fighting doesn't stop soon. Authorities in drought-stricken southern France suspect arson as the cause of dozens of forest fires that broke out yesterday. The worst fires are in the Riviera, where at least 4 European tourists died when they were trapped by fast-moving flames. And in northern China, about 30 people were killed and more than 140 injured when a fireworks factory exploded. A series of blasts leveled the factory's main building and damaged dozens of others. Investigators say hot weather set off gunpowder stored at the site. A judge declared a mistrial today in the case of a former Inglewood, California police officer accused of assaulting a black teenager during an arrest last year. Critics compared this incident to the 1991 Los Angeles police beating of Rodney King. The teenager in this case was not seriously hurt. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury said it was deadlocked on the charges against former officer Jeremy Morse. No decision yet on a possible retrial. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, betting on terrorist attacks. The Pentagon plan that has critics asking, what were these people thinking? The folks at the Pentagon who came up with the idea portrayed it as a weapon in the war on terror. This was the idea. They'd create a kind of futures market in which participants worldwide would bet on future terror attacks. The hope was this might help elicit information that could actually prevent attacks. Word of the plan got into the morning papers. By afternoon, well, here's Jim Axelrod.
So maybe it wasn't a Nobel Prize-winning idea. The Pentagon is now scrapping a plan to predict the future in the Middle East.
My understanding is that it's going to be terminated.
After a full-scale pile-on in Washington.
There is something very sick about it. And if it's going to end, I think you ought to end the careers of whoever it was thought that up.
It was called the Policy Analysis Market, an attempt by the Pentagon to make market forces a crystal ball. 24. Modeled on the commodities market, traders would have searched high and low for information to buy and sell futures contracts, not for oil prices or orange juice, but for events in the Middle East, like Arafat being shot or another terror attack.
It doesn't meet the test of common sense and reason.
It may have been bad politics, but the Pentagon hoped to benefit from the proven wisdom of the market. If enough smart people are thinking the same way, there's probably something to it.
Our market has been quite successful.
The Pentagon's market was based in part on the one Bob Forsyth runs. He's predicted results of elections this way for 15 years, within 2% accuracy.
It takes all the available information that traders have individually and brings it together so that all that information is reflected in the trading price.
But in the Capitol Hill calculus, assassinations and terrorism carry heavier moral weights than election results.
This program could provide an incentive, actually, to commit acts of terrorism.
But let's be clear. Traders could have bought and sold no more than $100 worth of contracts. And for all the hue and cry today, Congress was notified about the idea 2 months ago. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, New York.
After some recent reports raised hopes the U.S. economy may be improving, a report came out today that said, well, maybe not. It shows a sharp drop in consumer confidence, which could lead to a drop in consumer spending. That news rattled Wall Street. The Dow fell 62 points. The NASDAQ fell about 4. Coming up next, more news about the economy. Eye on America gives you a look at houses. But in this economy, what looks like a house has a lot of people using them as banks. We'll give you a look at the refinancing boom and whether it's about to bust.
How far would you go to feel like a younger man? Tristan just goes to his doctor's office.
I was told by my MD that my testosterone levels were very low.
Testosterone replacement therapy. More and more men are going for it, but what are the risks? A Health Watch report tomorrow on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
If there is one bright spot in the U.S. economy, it is the housing sector. With mortgage rates at historic lows, the housing industry is booming. As CBS's Wyatt Andrews reports in the special Eye on America series, Making Ends Meet.
So what do we got going over here?
There is no economic slowdown for remodeling contractors like Mark Brick.
The homeowner has a sunroom that we put on.
Just in this one Milwaukee neighborhood alone, he's working 3 remodeling jobs, each worth more than $200,000.
Business has been pretty phenomenal.
Define phenomenal.
Well, phenomenal, you can see growth rates as high as 20 or 30%.
Times may be tough in the rest of the economy, but it's the best of times for housing and anything related to housing. For example, at the Kohler Corporation, a leading maker of bath and kitchenware, it's a year of record sales.
You sold a record number of bathtubs and china and faucets across the board.
Do you want this?
And that means jobs. The home improvement chain Home Depot is adding 40,000 jobs.
He said he sent the file in.
The booming mortgage industry has gained 150,000 jobs. What's happened is that the same low interest rates that spurred demand for homes has also supercharged the refinancing of home mortgages.
The industry has never seen a market like this ever.
Here's how Pat Sinks of the mortgage firm MGIC describes the mortgage business.
Smoking, absolutely, and if I could think of a better adjective, I'd use that.
Smoking.
Smoking. It is record times.
The number of home refinancings has set a record in each of the last 3 years, but last year was the year of cash. Last year, by borrowing against their homes, consumers took out and then spent an additional $200 billion. And what's different now is that consumers took the biggest slice of that $200 billion and spent it on their homes. Give me the list of what you buy, for example, when you do a job like this.
We're buying concrete, we're buying windows, we're buying skylights. It's endless what we're buying.
But if cash from mortgages is the heat in a cool economy, that's also a problem. Mortgages can't stay red hot much longer.
We are now processing loans for people who have refied 2, 3, and 4 times. They're not going to continue to refinance.
We still are framing in the ceiling.
Meanwhile, Mark Brick enjoys a waiting list of clients competing for his service. Today, in this economy, home is where the money is. In Milwaukee, Wyatt Andrews for Eye on America.
Tomorrow in this CBS series, the threat of deflation, falling prices. What's wrong with that? Plenty. And we will show you tomorrow night by taking you someplace it's happening all the time. Coming up next tonight, she was just 6 when she was reported missing 17 years ago. Has she now been found? It has been almost 2 decades of heartbreak, hoping and praying for the family of Shannon Sherrill. Now, it is possible she may just be coming home. CBS's Cynthia Bowers has this remarkable story, Shannon's story.
For nearly 17 years, close-knit Thorntown, Indiana has clung to hope.
I've never given up hope that she'd be back.
That the only child ever to disappear from here would someday be found. The original missing persons poster of little Shannon Sherrill still hangs in Town Hall here. It was October of 1986 when the 6-year-old girl was playing with friends in this trailer park and suddenly went missing.
I need to find my little girl.
All these years, an exhaustive search, including a computerized age progression, yielded few clues until last Saturday.
I heard her voice and it just lit up inside.
Mike Sherrill was talking to a 22-year-old woman from Virginia who said she might be his daughter Shannon. The woman, a married mother of 2, said she had recovered some memories of childhood in therapy.
Not a day goes by that I haven't looked for her or thought about her.
Once a cold case, the kidnapping is now back on the front page. Investigators from the Indiana State Police aren't saying much about rumors of similar scars.
It's an active, ongoing investigation.
As they wait for DNA test results to come back. A few miles down the road at the Eat Here and Get Gas restaurant he runs, Shannon's dad is trying to keep his emotions in check.
Got a million questions. But I probably just put my arms around her and hug her at home.
For 17 years, hope was all folks around here had. Now, just maybe, they might have a miracle. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Thorntown, Indiana.
And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather inviting you to join us again tomorrow for the CBS Evening News. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, log on to cbsnews.com. Testosterone therapy. It helped him feel younger. Could it help you? Tomorrow, experience CBS News.